The awards recognise excellence in architecture and building in the Lower Hunter. This Coal Point house was the best residential design. Lindsay Johnson, who's a lecturer at Newcastle University's Architecture Department, says he was inspired by the Lake Macquarie setting.
The idea was to try and disrupt the site as little as possible and to break up the mass of the building so that it would sit comfortably into this very sensitive site.
The top small commercial property went to Eckford Johnson Enviroplan Architects for the company's own office block in King Street, Newcastle. The Heritage Award was won by Matt Sainsbury of Suitors Architects for the restoration of this Stockton house. It had been extensively damaged during the earthquake. A record number of entries were received in this year's awards. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
After yesterday's frenzied activity by the miners to set up their protest at the state-owned New Vale colliery, the pit top was quiet today, especially from behind shut gates. The industrial action is to protest against the government's plans to close New Vale Colliery in January and to wind back the nearby Awabba State mine at the cost of 200 jobs. Hundreds of metres below the protest camp, the 10 miners at the helm of the sit-in had spent their first 24 hours in darkness, an experience described by Phil Dunn in a phone link. On the surface, Pacific Power Management was meeting with the miners' union and issued a letter warning the sit-in is illegal. But the miners are determined to continue their push for a moratorium on the cutbacks.
We've just made a full report back to the rank and file on the job, fully explaining to them of what the position is, and they have overwhelmingly supported us that the campaign will continue.
And those deep in the earth are just as adamant that the fight should continue.
We're staying here until someone can tell us, give us some answers as to what our future is.
A spokesman for Pacific Power said late this afternoon that the company had applied to the local coal authority for a return-to-work order to end the indefinite strike. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Couple of settlers.
Only a week out of hospital, asthmatic John Van Kim Pima was cooking chips on the stove just after 3 o'clock when he stepped outside his Belmont home. Minutes later, he saw smoke.
In the garden, and something was cracking, and he walked inside and thought everything was afire then. It was alight then.
Brigades rushed from Belmont and Windale and extinguished the fire, but not before the kitchen was severely damaged. The rest of the house sustained extensive heat and smoke damage. This fire, says Belmont Station Officer Bob Agland, is a timely reminder to never leave stoves unattended.
It often happens with women, they get distracted with children and that's easy to do, but just try not to leave fat burning without unattended.
While Mr Van Kim Pima sets about having his insured house repaired, he's wondering what to tell his brother, who arrives from Holland tomorrow for a holiday. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
9-2, 13-2 and 9-1. The unplaced favourite at 7-2, Matinee Idol. The sixth at Rose Hill in Sydney was the Bankstown Sports Club handicap over 1,500 metres. $15-4, 13-2 and 13-4 in favourite. At Broadmeadow in Newcastle, the seventh was the Tats Club Cup. $39.20 and $8.70, $2.20 and $2.50. The Quinella, $190.70 and the Trifecta, a beauty, $2,347.60.
It's no secret that the cottage atop Shepherd's Hill boasts some of the best views on the coastline. Built in 1890 as the master gunner's quarters for the Crimean War, it remained Army property, serving as an officers' mess during World War II. The Army used the dwelling until the 1960s, when the Newcastle City Council took over as trustee. Still standing after years of battering by strong ocean winds, Hill Cottage will now be restored and turned into a coffee shop restaurant. The $1 million views an obvious drawcard. The $200,000 development includes a 45-seat restaurant, a tea room and coffee shop and a landscaped car park. Today, new tenant Neil Slater, owner of Scratchley's restaurant on Newcastle Harbour, met with conservation architect Barney Collins to look over the plans. With $60,000 set aside just for restoration work, it's a challenging project.
We've got to be very careful how we actually restore the individual items of the building to make sure that they, one, project how they were originally built, but two, also survive in such an extreme environment.
Although the initial idea has been given the go-ahead, the development application will go before Newcastle City Council this week. According to the new occupant, the hard work has just begun.
There's quite a deal of time in getting the development application and the building application through, and it would be quite foolhardy to open in the middle of winter.
Melinda Smith, NBN News. Talk to most of these former National Textile employees and they'll tell you that getting retrenched is a traumatic experience. Trying to find a job is even worse. When the Katara-based yarn factory of National Textiles was taken over late last year, modern technology moved in, 350 employees moved out. These workers are former cleaners, canteen and production staff. Each week they attend the course for up to 25 hours and are paid $170 through the Department of Employment, Education and Training. It's a custom design program for all ages and all levels of experience.
It does you good and it gives you a bit of confidence. I sort of thought, well, there's no good me looking for a job. But they give you a bit more confidence here and they say, yes, now you can do this.
Melinda Smith, NBN News. It's an exciting 1993 season for newly appointed artistic director Kingston Anderson. The former NIDA graduate says he's pleased with the range of work and styles he's prepared for Hunter audiences. The Zeal Theatre Company will once again stage a colourful children's production at Fort Scratchley during the Christmas holidays. On stage at the Playhouse, the program opens with Macbeth starring Penny Cook, followed by David Williamson's Money and Friends. Local playwright John O'Donoghue will stage a world premiere, and there's much more.
Oh, great diversity. There's a classic, a new play, a musical, a very fast-paced play about sexual politics in the 90s, and a very funny piece that we're doing at the end of the year called The Lemon and I.
Melinda Smith, NBN News. The Environmental Health Centre, located on Main Road, Bullaroo, has been set up by the Hunter Area Health Service. The project will be run along the same lines as the one in Port Pirie in South Australia, providing information to the community on environmental health issues with the help of a full-time counsellor. Funding for the refurbishment was provided by Pasminco, with voluntary help from the local rugby club on the paint job. On its own, the centre won't be solving the lead contamination problem, but coordinator Fran Timms believes it's the beginning of a community-based solution.
And this is the start to try and be a catalyst between the community and other agencies.
While the new centre is a welcomed initiative, the No Lead Action Group says it will continue to fight for a commitment from government authorities to control the sources of lead emissions.
But what we need to be told is that it's a short-term facility, that the state and federal governments will get behind controlling the sources of lead to a greater extent than what they're doing now.
Melinda Smith, NBN News. Nearly 200 self-funded retirees offered their support to the cause at Broadmeadow. The organisation is known as AIR, the Association of Independent Retirees, which began in Queensland 2 years ago. Since then, support has mushroomed, with 7 branches in New South Wales and hundreds are joining every week. AIR argues that the existing social security system penalises those who've worked hard for their retirement years. Many are not entitled to full benefits and believe that the government wants them to be self-supportive, but discourages them with unfair taxes and no benefits. AIR wants changes to the means test, Medicare levy and income tax relief. State President John Waite says that collectively, independent retirees represent more than 1 million Australians, making it an effective lobby group.
We do feel that our situation, there are a number of inequities, and we want parity with what the pensioners have if we possibly can.
A similar meeting to form a branch in Maitland is planned for early next year. Melinda Smith, NBN News. A total of 38 presentations will be made over 2 days by students studying clinical epidemiology. For the past 2 years, they've designed their own projects, learning the research skills and methods of organising healthcare. Those findings are being presented to fellow postgraduates at the David Madison Building. Next year, the students will begin a master's degree in their chosen areas. Topics include how to run a successful intensive care unit, reasons why people have road accidents, and why asthmatic sufferers are readmitted to hospital. Students from across Australia are taking part in the course, the first one of its kind at Newcastle Uni to involve interstate distance learning. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
While the decorations hanging from the roof heralded the coming of Christmas, the presence of a federal minister in Maitland indicated another event is looming, an election. Kim Beazley wasn't short on praise for the ALP's candidate for the federal seat of Paterson, Bob Horne, but he was not so kind about the coalition and how it would handle the record numbers of unemployed.
Opponents proposed to eliminate all the programs for them. We propose to provide them with opportunities for training. We don't regard them as a cost saving. We regard them as our brothers and sisters whose problems must be alleviated.
Some of the federal government's programs for helping the unemployed back into a job were outlined at a seminar on training reform. Mr Beazley emphasised developing skills for markets where there'll be jobs and national uniformity in training so those skills are mobile. In the Hunter Valley, there's 44,500 people registered with the Department of Social Security's jobless programs. And while they may represent only a fraction of the almost 1 million unemployed in Australia, Mr Beazley says the training reforms are aimed at not so much creating a clever country, but at providing something far more jobs-based.
We've got to get across the capable country, and now the time has come to focus much more heavily on vocational training. And we will make that more convincing to people when they see that we are more convinced about it.
And as for when Paul Keating will call the election,
it has to be sometime before July the 1st next year.
We can't be more precise.
No.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Cold gold met Olympic gold at the celebrations. Australia's medal-winning rowing team in Barcelona, the Awesome Foursome, made an appearance. The brewery tapped its first beer in 1952. The Grafton Lager was soon followed by a Pilsner, Special Bitter and Grafton Export no less. Tui's Limited bought the 5-hectare site in 1962 and it's now the largest private employer in Grafton, turning out 30% of all beer on tap sold in New South Wales. The brewery has just won International Quality Assurance accreditation. There wasn't just beer flowing in Grafton today. A bottle of bubbly went to christen the rowing club's latest acquisition, the Awesome Foursome's training shell used in the run-up to the Olympics. The sleek craft should prove formidable in the head of the river race tomorrow. The oarsmen took it for a test stretch on the choppy Clarence River, a special treat for a young passenger.
Last year, the women won the mug, the men made the grand final but just missed out. Teams from Sydney, Newcastle, the Central Coast and the Manning will compete over the weekend. In the women's, Sydney Uni will be tough to beat with 2 Aussie rep players. Penrith will be giving the locals a run in the men's. It was preliminary rounds today with semi-finals and finals tomorrow morning.
Musical Demon got the nod from Stunning Planet with Paradimancia third. Three to 1 in favourite, 5 to 1 and 66 to 1. At Moonee Valley, the 7th was the Suni Treats handicap over 1,006 metres. Seven to 2, 5 to 1 and 5 to 2 in favourite.
It was pomp and ceremony at its best for Toronto. These troops from the 16th Transport Squadron taking part in a time-honoured tradition. They were seeking freedom of entry to the city of Lake Macquarie. Mayor Doug Carley doing the honours, inspecting the troops before they were given a scroll and permission to go ahead. But their battle was not won yet. The squadron had to challenge the Inspector of Police before entering the city streets. It was a street of activity, the boulevard full of cars and kids, with heads turning everywhere. All the action was enough to leave anyone in a spin, and that's no bull. Matthew White, NBN News. More than 320 triathletes took to the water and the streets this morning for a 50-kilometre endurance trek around Port Macquarie. Kicking off at the Settlement City Shopping Centre, competitors swam 1,500 metres in a canal before setting out on a 42-kilometre cycle leg. It wasn't long before the field stretched, the Gold Coast lock Volmahos, fresh from wins in Noosa and Wollongong, setting the pace. 1 hour, 50 minutes and 27 seconds later, Volmahos crossed the line, closely followed by Mark Lees, also of the Gold Coast. The First Lady home, Bianca van Voorsk. She was determined to improve on last year's performance that saw her take a wrong turn and come third. Her time, 2 hours, 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
A mad one-lap dash to set a qualifying time was required, and Dubbo's Mark Blyton obliged with a mid-16-second lap. Gunnedar's Alan Baker and Newcastle's Don McEwen started on pole, and was McEwen who raced to an early lead that built into a huge gap over Baker and also Ralph Ranger. On lap 39, Bruce Gillen spun out, forcing the first stoppage of the Classic. And on the restart, absolute mayhem. Pine and Brewer retired, McEwen was disqualified. With 10 laps left, Baker showed a clean pair of hills to race away to a well-deserved victory, with Blyton completing a Newcastle shutout along with Dubbo's Paddy Ward. To water sport, the inaugural Dixon Park dip attracted a disappointing field of 70-odd swimmers who had to negotiate an 800-metre course, with the hardest part of the swim the start, as a strong northerly sweep made it difficult to get out past the breakers. In the under-30 men's and women's event, it was a great battle. Stephen Rodd just holding out the fast-finishing Brad Russell. Kelly O'Neill was the first woman home. The East Coast Barefoot Challenge concluded at Raymond Terrace today, and in the unlimited inboard division it was a win for Steve Smith skiing behind Thoroughbred. In the unlimited outboard, local lad Gary Adams, one of Australia's best performers, edged out Brent Jarvis and Warren Cornell to take that section. But a turn up for the books in the open division, with Andrew Tompkins upsetting Gary Adams, with Greg Gainsford a credible third.
Better environmental care and management was the focus of this year's Schools Environment Award in the Tiny Towns competition. Cooranbong Community School near Lake Macquarie scooped the pool when it was judged the best in the Metropolitan Schools category and winner of the overall State School Prize. Today, the students were congratulated by a very proud principal. Throughout the year, 204 pupils from kindergarten to year 6 have been working hard, with the help of parents and the community, to green up their school playground. Special projects have included recycling, composting, papermaking and regeneration. Barren areas have been transformed, trees and vegetables have sprouted, and some local worms have found a new home. As the state's best, the school will now represent New South Wales in the national finals of the Tidy Towns competition. For Chief Worm Coordinator Alyssa Litchfield, it's been a time of discovery. Next year, the school plans to set its environmental sights even higher when it joins forces with the local Chamber of Commerce to compete in the major Tidy Towns Award. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
The Canberra Lakers dominated the first stanza and should have scored early. In the second quarter, the Lakers again pressed forward with Stevenson a golden opportunity. And moments later, another chance went begging. Nil all at the long break, but soon after the resumption, enter John Robertson. Two minutes later, the Blades were in again. Try as they may, the Canberra Lakers couldn't breach the gap, although they never gave in. The Brisbane Blades will play the Perth Thundersticks in this year's National Hockey League Grand Final.
Earlier this year, Newcastle's medical students, their teachers and volumes of course documentation were given a thorough check-up by the Australian Medical Council. As the accreditation body for medical schools, the council can make or break a course, and Newcastle passed with flying colours. The council's report found the course at Newcastle has a number of unique qualities, and it has made a major contribution to medical education in Australia and the world. It's a finding that's not surprisingly delighted the staff.
For the next 10 years, we've been given a vote of confidence by the Australian Medical Council. If you like, this is our licence to train medical students.
The report recognised the enthusiasm and talent of a large proportion of people involved in the teaching program, also impressed that they were supported by a large and very capable educational infrastructure. The report also found the course and its links to hospital resources gave excellent clinical experience, a very strong research performance and, importantly, broad community support.
I think Newcastle should be very pleased that we're identified as having clearly led most of the innovation in medical schools in Australia, and that is fully recognised in the report, and indeed it recognised internationally. So it's more than just the appraisal of our own school for our own purposes, but what we have done really for others, and a lot of the new reforms in medical education are taking much of their direction from the type of thing we've done here.
It was bleak and miserable at Mitre 10 Stadium today, pretty much summing up the feelings of Bruce Stowell. Following Sunday night's 1-0 loss to Parramatta, the Breakers' coach faced a list of player problems.
We've got Darren Stewart and Craig Moffat who are suspended. We've got a question mark over the fitness through illness of Warren Spink. John Kosh, I believe, is going to be right.
The loss of his two main defenders through suspension is a problem Stowell admits he can do without.
It's a well-known, documented fact that I've got problems in scoring goals at the other, so I really would have liked a full squad to select from, but I haven't, so I'm going to have to make the best of it.
Andy Roberts is likely to slot into the defence line, but with the Breakers scoring just 3 goals this season, Stowell says it's make or break time for the attack.
And coming against a side like Adelaide City, who are a really excellent side, and who can attack and defend very well, we really are going to have to put it together to break this no-goal scoring duck.
Meanwhile, at City Hall last night, celebration time for the Newcastle Knights, who were given a civic reception. Players from all 3 grades and coaching staff attended the function, hosted by Lord Mayor John McNaughton. Although it was a good chance for the players to unwind, it's clear season 93 is not far from their minds.